previous 3 lessons, we've looked at the 10 different selection tools. There's still a couple tools remaining in the move and selection group in our toolbox. In this selection, I like to look at the move tool and then also our crop tools. I'll continue to use the 2 balloon images that we've used the last 3 lessons. A little prep work I did beforehand was I went into the bowler balloon image and selected the 3 balloons. You can use whatever selection tools you like. I came into our balloon landscape Resvanian image and pasted those 3 balloons as a new layer. So with the move tool, I can make a selection. I'm going to do the large balloon here just with the lasso tool. And I'm on that second layer. I'm going to select around the balloon with the lasso and then take the move tool and I can grab that selection and drag it to where I want it. And now I'll take the rectangular marquee tool, select the area of the balloon. Now remember, this area around the balloon is transparent. If I turn the background off, you'll see the transparency. So when you select transparent pixels and move them, you're actually not moving anything. So I'm only going to move the balloon and not the transparent pixels. Again, do a Control D to deselect. And this last one, here I'll use the elliptical marquee tool. I want a normal style. I'm going to take my move tool, and if I use the arrow keys, watch what happens. I'm going to take the left arrow on my keyboard, and the selection collapses around the content area, ignoring all of the transparent pixels. I'll drag the selection with the move tool. And again, Control D to deselect. So that is how we use the move tool to move things. Now if you have nothing selected and you take the move tool, it will move the contents of the layer. So notice that I'm moving all 3 balloons together. I'm going to do a Control Z to undo. Sometimes though, you might be on a layer. In this case, the background is locked, and if I try to move it, I get an error. Could not use the move tool because the layer is locked. Now I'm going to unlock that background, changes the name to layer 0, and if I make a selection on that layer and I then move it, notice it's going to cut the area out. In the previous lesson, we looked at how we could take the rectangular marquee tool and set my fixed size to 1280 by 720 and click somewhere, and I get a selection of that, and I can crop, going to the image menu and choose crop, and reduces that image down to that size and gets rid of the extraneous area. The problem is though, maybe I want to have this also smaller at the same time. I'm going to do a Control Z to undo. I'm going to deselect. So I could go into the image menu and say image size and maybe reduce this down to say 1400 pixels. I want this to be relative. And so now I've made it smaller, and I can then take my rectangular marquee tool and get a larger area and crop. I'm going to undo. Let's go back to our full-size image. So it'd be several steps to shrink it down and then crop it to the size that I want. Underneath the object selection tools, we have the crop tool. So I'm going to select the crop tool, and I have a setting here of 1280 by 720 in terms of the size that I want. And I can begin to change the dimensions by grabbing the corner handle. And I can use the cursor arrows to nudge this in place where I want it. And then press the Enter key, and it's going to crop my image to those 1280 by 720 pixels and size it accordingly based on the area that I had selected. So that's an advantage of the crop tool. It lets you resize and crop at the same time to a particular dimension. Now again, I'm going to do a Control Z to undo. Underneath the crop tool is the perspective crop tool. I'm going to choose that. I'm going to open up a couple more images. So I have two images here that I downloaded from pexels.com. One is of this billboard. The other is simply a brick wall. What I'd like to do is put this billboard on that brick wall, but there's obviously a problem because they're two different perspectives. That's where the perspective crop can be handy. I like to think of the perspective crop as almost an anti-perspective tool. We're going to take something that's in perspective and get it out of perspective and get it straight on. So here I'm going to take the perspective crop tool, and I'm going to start just by creating a rectangle about the size I think this billboard really would be in terms of height and width. And then I'm going to grab the corners and place the corners in the corner of the billboard. In essence, matching the perspective. Now here's where the magic comes in. I'm going to press the Enter key. There is the image now, taken out of perspective and looking straight on. And I can do a Control A to select all that, Control C to copy, come into my wall and do a Control V to paste. And maybe I just want to resize this down a little bit, so I can go to Edit, Transform, Scale. And basically get the size that I want. Press the Enter key. Take the Move tool and move it in place. Here's another example. Different perspective, looking upward. Same thing, I'm going to take the perspective crop tool. I'm going to draw a square about where I think this should be as far as the width and height. So that gives me this grid, and then I can move the corner handles in. Press the Enter key, and there's the sign straight on. And I use that in another composite image somewhere. That's the perspective crop tool. There's also two more tools under here, which is the slice tool and the slice select tool. The slice tool is used to divide an image into separate image files for use in a web page, perhaps in an HTML table, and maybe to create different sections of that image as buttons. So I can select the slice tool, and maybe I want to make this balloon a separate image on a web page and use it as a button. I can create a rectangle with the slice tool, and it divides the image up into slices. So here we have one giant slice Then the slice, my manual slice of the balloon, the area underneath of it as another slice, and the area to the right as another slice. With the Slice Select tool, I can select a slice and get the handles for that slice and resize the slice. To export these files as separate images, we would go to the File menu, go to Export, save for Web Legacy. We can optimize these for different formats. I can choose the format that I want: GIF, JPEG, PNGs. I'm going to choose JPEG and then click Save, and I can choose to export the HTML and the images, or just the images, or just the HTML. I'm going to choose HTML images, find my location. So I've got a folder here that I already created called Slices, and I'll click Save. If I navigate to that folder, I'm going to see a folder called Images, and then there's my HTML code for displaying those images. And if I open up the image folder, there are my various slices. Again, 4 slices, taking the file name and giving 01.jpg, 02.jpg, 03, and 04. Working with slices is really kind of beyond the scope of what I intended for this course. If you do a lot of web development and web design, it would be worth further exploring this option through other sources such as other YouTube videos. Perhaps we'll explore this at the end of the course in the final finishing touches. If you'd like to see more videos in the Photoshop Practicum playlist, click the title at the bottom. If you'd like to be alerted to new videos, please click my photo in the top right to subscribe to the channel.